She told me it had to end tonight, but I couldn't walk away. Not before I showed her why it ever began. The office was almost unrecognizable at night. By day, it buzzed with voices, ringing phones, and the steady rhythm of keyboards. But now it was silent. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed faintly, half of them already dimmed, leaving soft shadows stretching across the long row of empty desks. Through the wide glass windows, the city glowed in the distance. Thousands of lights burning in apartments, offices, streets far below. It was strange, being up here in that quiet, almost like floating above the world. I stayed behind to finish paperwork, but truthfully, I liked this silence. It gave me time to breathe, to think, to catch up on the parts of myself that got drowned out during the day. My pen scratched softly against the page. Somewhere in the distance, the air conditioning let out a low, steady hum. I thought I was alone, until I heard the door open. Her footsteps didn't sound hurried, like they usually did when she strode through the office with purpose. Tonight, her heels landed softly on the carpet, as if even she respected the stillness of the hour. I looked up, and there she was, my boss. Jacket draped over one arm, hair falling loose around her shoulders. She carried the weariness of a long day in the slope of her posture, but even in that exhaustion, there was a kind of grace to her. She paused when she saw me. "You're still here." Her voice was low, quiet, almost blending with the silence of the room. I smiled faintly, just tying up some loose ends. Her eyes lingered on me a little longer than necessary. Then she set her things down on the desk near mine. She untied her hair, shaking it gently free from the clip, and rubbed the back of her neck as if trying to release the tension that had built up through the day. The simple gesture pulled something in me. It was so unguarded, so human. Not the composed, confident woman everyone else saw during office hours. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The quiet between us wasn't awkward, but heavy, weighted with something unspoken. I could hear the faint rustle of her sleeve as she adjusted her blouse, the subtle sound of her sigh as she leaned against the edge of the desk. Her perfume, subtle, warm, and familiar, drifted toward me, filling the space between us. She broke the silence first. "You really don't have to stay so late." I shrugged. "I don't mind. The quiet helps me think." Her lips curved, almost into a smile, though it didn't fully reach her eyes. "I suppose it does." The city lights reflected in the glass behind her, painting her silhouette in silver and gold. I couldn't help but notice the softness in her gaze when she looked at me. And in that stillness, I realized something. The night stripped away the roles we played during the day. She wasn't just my boss anymore. She was simply her, and I was simply me. And somehow, that was more dangerous than anything else. Her fingers linger on the edges of the papers, as though giving herself a moment before speaking. The light above us flickered once, then steadied, casting her face in a pale, tired glow. Her voice came low, measured, but I could hear the steel threaded through it. "This can't continue." For a second, the words didn't make sense. Not because I hadn't expected them. I think, deep down, I had known this moment would come. But hearing them spoken aloud made the quiet between us suddenly heavier, sharper, as though even the air was paying attention. She didn't look at me when she said it. Instead, she focused on the pen in her hand, clicking it once, then again. A nervous habit I'd never seen from her before. Her knuckles whitened with the grip, betraying the tension her voice tried to hide. I stayed silent, watching her. Her shoulders were squared, her tone firm. This was the boss everyone else knew, the woman who could cut through indecision with a single sentence. But sitting here, under the dim light, I saw more. I saw the way her jaw tightened, as if she was holding something back. I saw how her breathing came just a touch faster, uneven in places. She finally looked at me, her eyes cool but too bright, as though they'd been holding back a storm. "You're younger." She stopped herself, pressing her lips together, as if even naming the truth made it too real. Then, softer, "People talk. They always do. And this," she gestured vaguely between us. "This is a mistake." Her words should have cut me. Maybe part of me expected them to. But as I watched her, as I listened, what I felt most wasn't rejection. It was how much it hurt her to say it. I leaned back in my chair, trying to gather my thoughts. The hum of the air conditioning filled the silence. Outside, a car horn echoed faintly up from the streets. Everything ordinary carried on while the world between us shifted. She sighed then, setting the pen down, and pressed her fingertips to her temple. I should have stopped it earlier. Her voice broke slightly at the end, softer than before, as though she wasn't speaking to me anymore, but to herself. The truth was right there in front of me. She wasn't just drawing a line out of coldness or indifference. She was doing it because she thought she had to, because she was afraid of what it meant if she didn't. And sitting across from her, in the quiet of the nearly empty office, I realized that fear didn't make me want to pull back. It made me want to reach for her even more. Her words still hung in the air between us, sharp and heavy, like the final line of a conversation that was supposed to be over. She thought she had ended it. Maybe she believed I'd nod quietly, pack my things, and let the silence swallow everything we'd left unsaid. But I couldn't. Not when her eyes told me the opposite of her voice. I leaned forward slightly, resting my forearms on the desk, careful not to close the distance too fast. My voice was steady, low enough that it felt like I was speaking into the space we shared rather than across the room. Then let me finish what I started tonight. The moment stretched. She froze, caught between shock and something else, something she didn't want me to see. Her lips parted, but no words came out right away. Instead, her gaze flickered to mine, then quickly away, as if the truth in her own reaction frightened her. Her hand reached for the pen again, almost instinctively, like it was her anchor. But she didn't click it this time. She only held it, staring at the smooth black plastic as though it might give her strength. "Don't," she whispered finally. Just one word, fragile and trembling, so unlike the confident tone she carried in every meeting, every decision. I should have listened. I knew that. But the hesitation in her voice wasn't the sound of someone sure of her choice. It was the sound of someone fighting herself. I didn't move closer yet. Instead, I let my words do the work. "You think ending it will make it easier," I said softly. "But all it does is leave both of us wondering what we never let happen." Her eyes shot up to mine then, wide and unguarded, and for the first time I saw the full weight of what she was hiding. Want. Fear. The dangerous mixture of both. She shook her head slightly, almost desperate, but her body betrayed her. She leaned back against the edge of the desk, her arms crossing loosely in front of her chest, not in defiance, but in protection, as though she needed to shield herself from how much my words stirred inside her. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It pulsed with everything neither of us dared to say. The steady tick of the clock on the far wall felt suddenly louder, counting the seconds of her hesitation. I took in the details I knew I'd never forget. The faint flush on her cheeks under the dim light, the rise and fall of her chest as she tried to steady her breathing, the soft shine of her hair slipping over her shoulder. She was fighting herself, and I was giving her reasons to lose. "Just tonight," I repeated quietly, more promise than demand. "Let me finish what I started." Her fingers tightened around the pen until it slipped from her grasp, clattering softly onto the desk. The sound echoed, final in its own way. And though she didn't say yes, she didn't say no either. The pen rolled to the edge of the desk and came to rest in silence. She didn't bother to pick it up. Instead, she lowered herself into the chair across from me, moving slowly, like the weight of her own thoughts pressed down on her shoulders. For the first time that night, she didn't look like my boss. She looked like a woman, tired, human, and carrying something too heavy for too long. Her hands folded in her lap, and her eyes stayed fixed on them as she spoke. Her voice was quieter now, stripped of authority, edged with a tremor that she probably hated revealing. "Do you have any idea how exhausting it is?" I stayed still, listening. Every room I walk into, I'm expected to be the strongest, to know every answer, to have no weakness, no hesitation. It doesn't matter if it's at work or even outside of it. I don't get to falter. I don't get to just be tired. Her words cracked at the edges, and though she tried to laugh it off, the sound was brittle. She leaned back in her chair, one hand rising to rub at her temple. I noticed the way her shoulders sagged, the way her breath trembled before she let it out. I wanted to reach across the desk right then, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I let her keep speaking. And you? She paused, searching for words. You don't see me the way they do. You don't look at me like a title. You look at me like, her voice trailed, as if saying the truth aloud would make it too real. Her fingers tapped nervously against her knee. I could see the conflict flickering across her face. Wanting to confess, terrified of what it meant. I finally spoke, gently. Like a person? Her eyes snapped up to mine, wide, startled, then softening. A breath slipped from her lips, almost a surrender. Yes. The air shifted between us. I could hear the faint whir of the city outside, the low hum of the office lights, but all of it seemed distant. What mattered was the way her voice had changed, the steel gone, replaced by something fragile, something true. I reached for the glass of water I'd left on the desk earlier and slid it toward her. She hesitated, then took it, her fingers brushing against mine for the briefest moment. That fleeting contact sent a spark through me, small, yet undeniable. She lifted the glass, sipped slowly, then set it down. And when her hand slipped back across the desk to steady it, her fingertips grazed mine again. This time, she didn't pull away. Her eyes met mine, tired, vulnerable, but no longer guarded. And in that look, I realized something. She wasn't asking me to fix her. She was asking me to stay, to be the one place where she didn't have to pretend. And God help me, I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Her confession still lingered between us, fragile and unfinished, like a door she'd cracked open just enough for me to see inside. She'd let me glimpse the weight she carried, the exhaustion of being strong for everyone else. And now, sitting here in this dim-lit office, I realized how much I wanted to take some of that weight from her shoulders. She leaned forward slightly, propping her elbow on the desk, her hand covering part of her face. A loose strand of hair slipped across her cheek, catching in the corner of her lips. She didn't seem to notice, or maybe she was too tired to care. My hand moved before I even thought about it. Slow, careful, deliberate. I reached across the desk and brushed the strand gently back behind her ear. My fingertips grazed her skin, warm, soft, alive, and for that brief moment, I felt her breath catch. She didn't flinch. She didn't lean away. She simply froze, as if the smallest touch had sent a ripple through her entire body. Her eyes lifted to mine, wide, questioning, almost pleading. There was no anger there, no reprimand, only silence, and the unspoken truth that neither of us could keep ignoring. "You make this too hard," she whispered. Her voice was unsteady, the words more like an admission than a protest. I could hear her breathing, faint, uneven, but steadying itself as if she were trying to calm the storm rising inside her. My own heart hammered so loudly I was afraid she might hear it echoing in the quiet. "Then let it be hard," I murmured. "Maybe it's supposed to be." Her lips parted as though she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Instead, she leaned back slightly, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, there was something different there. Not resignation, but surrender. Not to me, but to herself. I didn't move further. I stayed where I was, giving her the space to decide what this moment meant. She leaned toward me, just an inch, but enough for her hand to brush against mine where it rested on the desk. It wasn't accidental. Her fingers lingered, tracing lightly along the side of my hand, tentative at first, then firmer, as if she were testing whether I'd pull away. I didn't. Her touch was warm, trembling, but full of meaning. It said everything her words couldn't, that she wanted this, even if it terrified her, that she had been holding herself back for so long, and she was tired of denying it. The city outside blurred into silence, the clocks ticking faded into the background. All I felt was her touch. All I saw was her eyes locked with mine. And for the first time, she didn't look like my boss. She didn't look like someone trying to keep control. She looked like a woman daring herself to let go, just a little, and trusting me enough to catch her if she fell. Her fingers lingered against mine, the weight of that small touch more powerful than anything she had said all night. I didn't dare move, afraid that the slightest shift might break the fragile thread connecting us. My hand stayed open, steady, waiting, not demanding, not rushing, just there. She stared at the point where our hands met, as if torn between pulling away and giving in. I could almost see the battle in her eyes, the silent argument with herself. Then, slowly, deliberately, she laid her hand fully over mine. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was quiet, hesitant, almost trembling. But the meaning behind it was undeniable. Her palm pressed into mine, her fingers curling slightly as if testing whether I'd hold her there. I did. The warmth of her touch spread through me, flooding my chest, grounding me in the moment. It was such a simple thing, skin against skin, but it felt like the most intimate choice she had ever made. Her eyes lifted to mine then, and I saw everything she had tried to hide all night. Vulnerability, longing, fear, and beneath all of it, the courage to let herself feel, even if only for this one moment. "You shouldn't," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. The words were a protest, but her hand stayed firmly against mine. "Neither should you," I answered softly. Her lips parted as though she wanted to reply, but instead, she let out a shaky breath. Her thumb brushed lightly against my knuckles, an unconscious movement, but it sent a quiet shock through me all the same. The silence thickened, no longer heavy with avoidance, but charged with something new, an unspoken agreement that neither of us wanted to name out loud. Her gaze didn't waver, though I could see the hesitation swirling beneath it. It wasn't about me. It was about her, about the rules she had set for herself, the walls she'd built to keep from being vulnerable. And yet here she was, letting one of those walls finally fall. I wanted to speak, to tell her how much this meant, how much she meant, but the words felt unnecessary. Everything was already being said in the quiet press of her hand against mine, in the way her breathing evened out, as though she found steadiness in my stillness. I shifted my thumb ever so slightly, brushing against the side of her hand. Her eyes softened, her lips curving just barely into something that wasn't quite a smile, but close. It was enough. The world outside could have collapsed, and I wouldn't have noticed. All that mattered was this, her choice to hold on instead of letting go, her willingness to share this impossible space with me. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a promise. It was something smaller, yet far more powerful. It was her saying, without words, "I don't want this to end either." And I knew then, I would carry this moment with me, no matter what tomorrow tried to take away. Her hand stayed in mine a little longer than either of us expected. Neither of us moved, as though we were afraid that letting go would undo everything that had passed between us tonight. At last, she drew in a deep breath, her shoulders lifting, then falling with a slow exhale. The tension that had been etched into her posture all evening seemed to ease. She withdrew her hand carefully, not with the abruptness of rejection, but with the gentleness of someone tucking away something precious. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, a faint smile touched her lips. It wasn't wide or bold, it was hesitant, almost shy, but it was real. "Just tonight," she said quietly. The words came as if she were reminding herself, not warning me. I didn't argue. I only nodded, because I understood. Tonight wasn't about promises or plans. It was about giving ourselves permission to feel what we'd been running from. And maybe, letting that be enough. She reached for her jacket, the soft rustle of fabric breaking the silence. I stood as well, and before she could slip her arms through the sleeves, I held it open for her. She paused, glancing at me, and for a heartbeat I thought she might refuse. But then she stepped forward, letting me guide the jacket over her shoulders. My hands brushed lightly against her arms as I smoothed the fabric into place. The contact was fleeting, yet it left me with a warmth that lingered long after my fingers had pulled away. "Thank you," she murmured, almost too soft to hear. We left the office side by side, our footsteps echoing down the empty hallway. The sound of her heels matched the rhythm of my stride, a quiet harmony that felt oddly comforting. Neither of us spoke as we descended the stairwell, as though words might shatter the fragile peace we'd found. When we stepped outside, the night air met us, cool, crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain on the pavement. The city stretched around us, lights shimmering in windows, cars humming in the distance, life continuing in its steady pulse. She walked close enough that our arms brushed occasionally, each touch small but deliberate in its own way. Once, her hand drifted just slightly, grazing against mine. She didn't pull away, and neither did I. We reached the edge of the street, pausing at the glow of the crossing light. She turned toward me then, her eyes reflecting the shimmer of the city around us. There was no speech, no declaration, only a look that said more than any words could. I needed this. I needed you. I nodded once, a silent answer. I'm here. I'll remember. The light changed, and we stepped forward together. Tonight would end, as all nights do. But the warmth we carried, the unspoken truth we finally allowed ourselves to feel, would stay. Maybe tomorrow would bring questions, doubts, even consequences. But right now was ours. And that was enough.